That's Gary's choice. Nurse practitioners?
No, the Air Force Association.
I told them to come around 6:30.
He pays less taxes than I do.
Your house is beautiful.
Wow.
Surcharge members of council.
Good evening, and welcome to our committee of the whole meeting for Monday, April 22nd. I'm Councillor Steve Robinson, and I'll be the chair tonight. I'm going to begin by reading our land acknowledgement. On April 22nd, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:01. And can I have a mover and seconder for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that the April 22nd, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Great. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none. We have no approval of minutes. We do have some delegations. So, might as well move right on to that. And the role of nurse practitioners in primary health care, and I believe that's with Nicole Smith, board chair.
Just right here?
Yes.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Nicole, and I have about a 6-minute sort of brief talk to give you. So thanks for having me today. And I'm here both as the board chair for the Smiths Falls Nurse Practitioner-led clinic, but I'm also a nurse practitioner that works here in the community of Smiths Falls. And I work at the Smiths Falls Community Health Center. So I'm really excited today to talk to you about the excellent work that the NPs are doing here in Smiths Falls. And first, I'm just going to kind of give a quick primer on what are nurse practitioners, because although we've been working in Ontario since the late 90s, I am always surprised to find out how many folks are unfamiliar with the role of nurse practitioners. So I did give I gave a handout, which unfortunately is quite out of date, but I really liked the pictorial representation, and I thought it was did a good job of kind of briefly outlining what we do. The other thing to acknowledge too is that there's a lot of different types of nurses, and people can get quite hung up on the different acronyms. So I thought I'd go through that as well. So to become a nurse practitioner, you're first trained as a registered nurse, which is a 4-year university degree. And then you will work at least 2 years as a registered nurse in the province of Ontario before you can consider returning to school to train as a nurse practitioner. And then that training is a 3-year graduate program where you get your Master's of Sciences in Nursing / nurse practitioner license or certificate. And then you'll go on to complete your licensing exam. And if you pass that successfully, you can then practice independently in Ontario as a nurse practitioner. So in Ontario, there's currently about 5,100 nurse practitioners that practice in the province. About the vast majority, 78% of them, work independently in primary health care, so working in clinics like the Smiths Falls Community Health Center, or Smiths Falls, like the nurse practitioner-led clinic or the Smiths Falls Community Health Center. The remaining work predominantly either in public health or will work in hospitals and specialized units, either adults or pediatrics. And that role is actually becoming a little bigger. So the role has really evolved in the last 25 years, and we currently work, as I mentioned, predominantly in clinics, and we work in a very similar role to family physicians. So meaning we see patients of all ages, we diagnose them, we send them for tests and imaging, prescribe medications, we do basic counseling, we refer to specialists and basically help them and their families stay healthy. So now to talk about the resource of the Smiths Falls Nurse Practitioner-led Clinic. So they've been operating here in Smiths Falls since 2012. And I first became acquainted with them in 2018 when I worked there as a student. And it really opened my eyes to the amazing care that the clinic provides daily to the people of Smiths Falls. So I was so impressed with it and really keen on supporting this model of care that I volunteered to become a member of the board. and now I'm the chair of the board. So, and MP representation is really important at all levels, and we strive to have at least 51% of the board members be nurse practitioners. And then we're always welcoming community members to also join our board. So there's approximately 26 other nurse practitioner-led clinics across the province, and there's currently at least two, I think, that are waiting final approval. Most notably one in East Ottawa, where they're looking to do quite a large community health center for that very vulnerable population. We are funded by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. We're not-for-profit and community governed, and we provide primary health care in a team-based environment to thousands of patients. And nurse practitioner-led clinics were established to support communities with a high need for primary health care that have been historically underserviced. So here in Smiths Falls, the nurse practitioner-led clinic has 14 staff members. We have 5 nurse practitioners, and they each have their own roster of patients. 2 registered nurses. We have administrative support, and then what are called allied health professionals. That includes a social worker, registered dietitian, and a pharmacist. In this model, nurse practitioners are what we call the primary care provider, or the most responsible provider. And actually, nurse practitioners are the primary care providers for about 30% of people in Ontario. So that's kind of the more technical piece, and I just wanted to give you an idea or paint a picture of what it's like to be a patient at a nurse practitioner-led clinic. So I was going to highlight this really amazing team-based care with a couple of different examples. So my first example is if you want a picture, a 65-year-old diabetic patient who has not had consistent care in the past 10 years until he was admitted. He came through the emergency department and deemed to be high risk and without a primary care provider. So he gets connected to the nurse practitioner-led clinic. He's recently retired from driving a school bus. He has no extra healthcare insurance, frequent food insecurity. He knows he's diabetic, but he's not really concerned because he usually feels okay. He's overweight, he lives alone, and states he is lonely. So he first sees the nurse practitioner. And so she can do labs and a physical exam, which shows that he is at pretty high risk for the negative complications of diabetes. She can start educating him about his health risks, prescribe necessary medications, send for the needed tests, and will do frequent follow-up. The nursing staff can follow up and ensure he understands his diabetes. They'll do his blood work, they'll do blood pressure teaching, and work on increasing his exercise. The dietitian will work with him on his diet, but she can also coordinate cooking classes and refer him to the food bank. Our social worker can provide counseling sessions and possibly refer to community groups to reduce isolation. And the pharmacist can make sure he understands his medications, knows how to use them, teach about side effects, and possibly connect to programs that will help him fund medications if he can't afford them. My next example is a single mom with 3 young children. So the nurse practitioner will provide primary health care to both mom and children, and will see them when they're sick. The nurse can independently do our Well Women visits and our Well Child visits. She can provide breastfeeding support to the mom if needed, and this frees up the nurse practitioner to be more available to see the sick patients. The dietitian might see mom if she is struggling financially to put together good meals, help out with a picky eater, or a baby that's struggling to thrive. The social worker is available to help out with parenting struggles, or if mom has depression, anxiety, or possibly advocate with the school if the child's having behavioral issues. So not only are we kind of team-based, we're also collaborative within the community. We work with many local providers to help improve care navigation, ensuring that people get the right care, the right place, at the right time. So a couple different examples of that is that we could maybe refer a patient who's in high need of dental care and to like some of the provincial dental programs that are free. Another example is a liaising with the hospital, and as it's kind of highlighted in my first example, to identify and catch folks who do not have a primary care provider and link them with the nurse practitioner-led clinic. Because we know outcomes are way better for people's health if they have a primary care provider. So the Smiths Falls Nurse Practitioner Clinic is accepting new clients who do not have primary health care right now. And we just ask that people would call Healthcare Connect to be attached to the clinic. And you can call them at 1-800-445-1822. And that is my presentation.
Thank
Do
you.
you have any questions?
Any comments, questions? Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. That was very interesting, and I will tell you, I am a client at the nurse practitioner,
Oh, great.
and my nurse is here tonight, and I get wonderful care. And it's wonderful. I wish we could get more of this going because our healthcare system is struggling, and I see nurse practitioners as being an answer to help and get things where we should be. Very,
You
very.
won't find me disagreeing.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thanks.
presentation.
Councilor McKenna.
Thanks for the presentation and congratulations on 12 years. For those who don't know, Nancy Unsworth really helped drive getting this going 12 years ago. And we, although it's difficult now to achieve primary health care, 12 years ago, we were in a very deep crisis hole. And the nurse, I don't know where we would be without the nurse practitioner-led clinic taking on those thousands of patients at that time and continuing. And the best news tonight is that you're still taking new patients and clients. And I just wish you so much. Another 12 years, it's just amazing. I was there for the opening and hope I'm there at the anniversary whenever you have it. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Councilor Brennan.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I love those case studies because I'm a diabetic as well. So, but I'm getting good care and taking care of it. But I just wanted to ask you, I believe a former colleague of ours is on the board. Would that be Kenny Graham? Is he still on? Is he still involved in the nurse practitioners? No,
No.
he was.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was.
Okay.
He was our chair.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
he
right,
was
yeah.
at one time. And so I've heard all about it from him as well. So thanks for coming.
Great. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Tycho.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, and your colleagues who are with you. And it's encouraging, as I think it's Councilor McKenna said, to know that you actually have capacity to take on new patients. And I think that's probably something that many people who are unattached in our community now maybe we're not aware of. So I'm glad you're here tonight to at least express that. Hopefully some word does get out that the opportunity is there. Do you have any way of knowing how many unattached patients there are in our community?
I don't have that number myself. I don't know if,
It's difficult to say, maybe between, say, 2,000 and 4,000 in Smith Falls, Lanark, Leeds, Granville. It's a large geographical area, so it's hard to kind of pin down exactly in this specific area, but I would guess it's a few thousand.
So significant.
yeah,
There are
for
people
sure.
out
And
there-
I'll say both in my role as a nurse practitioner at the Smith Falls Community Health Center and here, I mean, we're frequently taking on people who, like my first example, haven't had healthcare in 10 years. So, I mean, and it's not an uncommon, it's not uncommon for us to get patients who haven't had care in quite some time.
Wow. So I guess maybe we can do what we can to help at least get the word out and help people understand the opportunities there. Are you seeing changes in people's health post-pandemic compared to what lives were like? Are situations improving? Are they getting more challenging? What's the realities that I guess people in the front lines of healthcare are experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak most closely to my day-to-day work as a nurse practitioner, and I have a pretty young client base, so lots of kind of when I started there 6 years ago, sort of families with young children. Now they're kind of all adolescents, a lot of them adolescents, and there's a really big mental health struggle, I would say, in our teenage population right now, post-pandemic. It's just really, I probably worked 2 years pre-pandemic, and I'm quite stunned actually at how significant their struggles are, kind of returning to school, social issues, depression, anxiety. So for me, that's kind of the biggest thing I can comment on personally through my own work.
And a follow-up to that, I guess, so are you able to make the connections, are you able to provide primary care, I guess, for their mental health, and the second step being if there's additional supports needed, or are you able to make those connections, or is that a challenging?
It's a very big challenge. Mental health services in this community, I mean, we have some great resources, but I mean, I just don't think there's enough right now. I think for mental health services at all levels, it's a really big challenge as a primary care provider to try and get those connections for people. And, so we end up doing a lot of it ourselves in that primary care setting. And again, like we do have a lot of community partners. There just isn't enough of any of us to go around, quite frankly, for that.
Well, thank you. We did advocate with the province at a municipal conference in January, and I think we got another opportunity in August. So it just reinforces maybe our own advocacy and where we try to help work with the province on behalf of our community to say we need more, we need help, we need support, we need the dollars. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And next we've got Danny Radford on backyard chickens in non-rural zoning. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening and happy Earth Day, Mayor Panko, members of council, and fellow residents. I'm here to propose an amendment to the animal control bylaw to allow backyard chickens in non-rural zone areas. Slide, please. My name is Danny Radford. I've been a resident of Smiths Falls for going on 4 years now. I hold degrees in both civil and geomatics engineering, and although I'm no expert, I have raised chickens in the past as a teenager growing up in Newfoundland, so I do bring a small amount of experience to the table. Currently, I'm an avid gardener and boastfully say that my family and I have managed to grow in excess of 600 pounds of produce in our tiny corner of our downtown fringe lot, all in the pursuit of at least learning the skills to become self-sufficient. To put things in perspective, my family uses in excess of 150 dozen eggs per year, and this would be awesome in offsetting that and getting it from a more nutritious and humane resource. Slide, please. So bottom line up front, for those who aren't familiar, that is I'm going to present what I'm asking in the beginning so that you can think about it throughout the duration of this presentation. In a nutshell, I'm advocating for 6 backyard chickens, no roosters, to be permitted within non-rural zone areas. I think we could rapidly implement this by piggybacking on the bylaw as in place in Carleton Place since 2021. However, I am proposing a reduction of 50% from their registration fee structure, as well as a small reduction in the land requirement that they have used. I'm advocating for 3,000 square feet versus 3,500. The reason for that will be explained throughout the presentation. Slide, please. So quick overview of the topics I intend to cover would be the perceived risks and mitigation strategies, benefits, going into municipal precedents, and common rules and guidelines I've pulled out from those. I'll get into my conclusion, and for anyone interested, my references are provided at the end. Slide, please. And slide again. So the first perceived risk that's often touted is of noise. This is a fallacy. Chickens at 2 feet distance are no louder than normal human conversation, and sound attenuates rapidly with distance. To give you a feel for what that means is 30 feet away from those chickens, they're no louder than a quiet library. And that's not taking into effect any walls or anything else that would serve to buffer that sound. In comparison to a common animal here in Smiths Falls would be a household dog. They can be up to 10,000 times louder than a chicken. Roosters would be in a similar vein, and that's why I'm proposing we ban roosters, not hens. And as they're not required for egg production. The next slide, please. The next often touted risk is for waste and odor. This is easily mitigated by a limitation on the number of hens permitted. There's often also limitations on the amount of manure that can be stored on site and how it can be stored. The typical number I found is 3 cubic feet held within a compost bin. Again, not to bash on dogs, but they're a great comparison. A 40-pound dog will produce double the amount of excrement of a flock of 6 chickens, and that excrement is cast widely. Unlike the hens, which would be confined to within the coop, and then their manure can be used as a valuable alternative to petroleum-based fertilizers to help produce nutritious food. Some will say that the hens will attract predators and pests. I think this is over-exaggerated, bordering on fallacy, as those predators and pests already exist here in the town. They're more strongly attracted to municipal garbage, as well as outdoor bird feeders. And as well, the chicken coops would be designed to be predator resistant, so they would not have access to the animals or the food in order to bolster their own numbers. Additionally, chickens are known to feed on many common pests such as ticks, and there are methods in which the runs could be orchestrated to vastly reduce those numbers in backyards. We can talk about that further if required in the question period. Others would say the coops are ugly. That's a minimal issue. They would be restricted to backyards. This is a new program, so they would be new constructed coops or done from recycled materials, like mostly out of the eye. And honestly to say, I will see more unsightly properties on my walk home than most of the chicken coops that will be produced. Others would say their negative relationships could be fostered with neighbors. And while it is possible, the anecdotes I've seen from the municipal precedents, it's very unlikely. There's more stories of neighborhood bonds being increased from sharing of the eggs Although it would not be permitted to sell them, many great things are legal to give but not to sell. As well, there are many anecdotes of neighbors going for years and not even realizing that there was a flock right next door. And this may be a surprise to some, but there are coops that exist in the downtown Smith Falls area that go unobserved every day. Next slide. One of the bigger risks that I often hear is that they can transmit communicable diseases to humans, primarily avian flu. This comes to a misunderstanding between what is possible and what is probable. If the chickens are confined in such a manner that wild fowl cannot come in contact with them, it is very likely to say they will not contract that disease. This has been corroborated by the American Veterinary Medical Association and was also cited by the City of Vancouver in their guidelines and study on this topic. Additionally, cooked poultry and eggs are no risk of transmission, and standard hygiene practices following handling of the chickens would negate the risk of this transmission. Slide, please. So the benefits to having backyard chickens are numerous, and I will touch on some quickly before going into some key ones I'd like to explore in depth. First being a valuable education aid, particularly in reestablishing the lost connection between where our food comes from. That's really become a big issue, I would say, in the last few decades, and it's ultimately resulted in inhumane treatment and lower nutritional value foods. Pest reduction, as I've mentioned, with ticks and other bugs, they are vastly more nutritious eggs, several fold higher in certain key elements such as omega-3s. They would also have little to no use of antibiotics or hormones. Not to over tout this, but a healthier constituency equals less demand on your medical system. So as we incorporate this different style of living, it could potentially have that benefit as well. Decreased reliance on our just-in-time logistical system and mass-produced food items. We've seen throughout COVID that although this system is powerful, it is fragile in unforeseen circumstances, with key items being unavailable or unaffordable when disruptions occur within the economy as a whole. It's a natural source of nitrogen-rich fertilizer, reducing requirements of petroleum products to be used on local gardens. It would enhance the quality of life of both the animal and the owner, particularly for children who could be given this as a responsibility to care for these animals and taking some ownership in the well-being of their own family and putting food on the table. That can't be undercited in a world where many children's sense of accomplishment is coming from online sources and video games. Let's root them back in the physical world. Community building is a great opportunity to share resources, being the eggs themselves, as well as your knowledge. Opportunities, I know there are garden groups that share the layouts of their backyard, and this would be one more opportunity to share that knowledge within the community. And there are many studies, or at least several, that cite that early and regular exposure to livestock serves to enhance the immunity of individuals. And there was an Ohio State University study that compared the immune systems of both Amish children and urban children that extracted that conclusion. And the last point I'll speak to on this slide is it serves to enhance the appeal that brought me here to Smith Falls in the first place. This is a town with all the amenities that many of us have grown to require, but it's also an alternative to the concrete jungle that the bigger cities bring forward. This is just one more thing that attracts the type of constituents, such as myself, that just want to have a feeling of those more agrarian way of life that our grandparents had before. And the changing world before us is starting to make those skills necessary. Next slide. A major benefit would be the reduction of biomass entering our landfills. Each chicken can consume approximately 83 pounds of food scraps annually. So just a thought experiment here, if 1,000 families had 6 chickens, we could reduce the amount of food waste in our landfill by 250 tons. Assuming a tipping fee being paid by the town, slightly less than I pay at GIM, of $100 a ton, that's a $25,000 savings or a 3% reduction in this year's budget for environmental services. So a little change can make a big change, if that makes sense. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency also indicates that biomass breaks down to emit methane. Methane is 28 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than CO2. So continuing with this thought experiment of 1,000 families with 6 chickens, we could remove, I believe, 237 tons of CO2 equivalent being emitted into our atmosphere in the form of methane gas. And the offset of food waste that occurs from these chickens has been corroborated by numerous experiments done internationally in France and Belgium in particular. Next slide, please. There's a major one, I think, here for Smith Falls. Chickens can serve to reduce food insecurity. Some stats here from 2020. The average Smith Falls resident makes 25% less income than the average Ontario resident. And that resident is vastly more dependent on fixed government transfer payments in the form of EI, disability, etc. What does that mean? It means the average Smith Falls resident is much less able to absorb the shocks of rapid necessity cost increases such as food. Since 2018, it's cited that 25% increase in food costs have occurred, and by the end of this year, it's forecasted it will be a 30% increase in those food costs. And that's through official numbers, which some would say are low. This has sent demands for Ontario food banks through the roof to record numbers. Smith Falls is no different. Since, I believe, November 2021, they've seen a 60% increase in clients. And last year alone, their food costs increased by 56%. And that is a trend that is forecasted to continue as extracted from our own food bank's annual report. So all that to say, Smith Falls is an at-risk municipality that probably is already experiencing food insecurity. As chickens can lay 150 to 300 eggs each at little to no additional cost once established, this is a valuable asset that could help alleviate that concern. And a little more food for thought is that rates of food insecurity directly correlate with rates of crime. So we bring down the food insecurity, we bring down the crime, we save law enforcement costs. And you also give productive hobbies to people who probably don't have any, and that leads to mischief. There's many causes, and the study is there if anyone would like to dive deeper. Next slide, please. There are many municipal precedents. I will just focus on a few. Carleton Place, I won't belabor. I think many of you probably have looked at that, but I'm requesting a similar structure of 6 hens with a registration fee, albeit reduced to half of theirs. Toronto, the largest city within our country, had a 5-year program with chickens. It ultimately ended, although it was touted as being very successful. Fears of the avian flu, as well as the cost of administering a program in the GTA, which is much, much larger than here, were cited as the main reasons. Kingston has had a backyard chicken program for over a decade with little to no complaint that I could find. The main bylaw complaint they received was neighbors reporting other neighbors for having unregistered chickens. So remove the requirement for registration and you would essentially remove those complaints. Just something to consider. Halifax has a very interesting approach. It's a tiered system. The number of chickens you're permitted correlates to the amount of land you own, but it starts at 10 chickens, regardless of land size. It has an optional and free registration program, which is only done to track the success of the program. And as well, to expedite the process, they rely on their existing bylaws to police this as opposed to drafting a very lengthy backyard chickens. So focus on their noise or unsightly, unsafe structures bylaws. We could do something similar. And then lastly, Vancouver, even that booming metropolis, allows 4 hens even in multifamily dwellings, albeit a single coop at a multifamily dwelling, but that is still something of interest. Next slide, please. All right, so from what I could find, these bylaws have not led to an influx of bylaw amendment requests for other types of livestock. I think the worst that we could expect by allowing this to go forward may be a request for quail or some other similar fowl that lays eggs. Anything else is just not a reasonable request. Some common and significant rules I've extracted where it's typical to limit the number of hens to 4 to 6, Halifax being the outlier with 10 to 25. Land requirements vary from no land requirement up to multiple football fields in the area, and I don't think that really serves our population to be that restrictive. I think the model of Carleton Place is 3,500 square feet is reasonable, but I don't have the geospatial data to corroborate it, but I feel our lots are slightly smaller. That's hence my request for 3,000 square feet, and I have numbers that break that down if the question arises. There'd be no sale of eggs, no slaughter of the hens. There would be mandatory setbacks from property boundaries, and there would be only 1 coop per property. Registration varies from optional to not required to mandatory, with all fee structures in between. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I hope I've shown that many of the risks associated with backyard hens are either myth, exaggerated, or easily mitigated, especially for the amount of good that they bring forward. The benefits range from helping our environment, our health, education, community building initiatives, as well as just humane treatment of where our food comes from. I think Smith Falls is a municipality at risk that's probably already experiencing noteworthy food insecurity. And all barriers that prevent people from being self-sufficient producing their own food, where reasonable, should be at least reconsidered and revised. With the uncertainty happening in the world, with multiple large-scale conflicts, I implore Council to start thinking of this initiative and others in preparation for what could be a wartime economy. With things happening with Israel, China's promise to take back Taiwan. We've seen how much COVID could disrupt our logistical supply chain. If we move into that type of economy, there needs to be a contingency plan in place. And as well, the precedent has been set by towns just like ours, smaller, larger, and by our neighbors. I think we could rapidly implement our program by piggybacking on their legislation. And although this was declined in 2018, and some of the members of this board did sit on that decision, I implore you to consider this with fresh eyes and an open mind, taking into consideration how much the world has changed since 2018, and seeing that trend towards a more agrarian lifestyle taking root in Smith Falls, like modern times homesteading classes and things that are happening. So with that, I think you're familiar with my request of 6 backyard chickens in a similar style to Carlton Place, reduce fee structure, loose RAM requirements. But if this is an initiative you support, please do not stop there. I think Halifax has a model that is worth exploring as well. And in the question period, I'd certainly entertain that. I know I'm probably over time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Panko.
Thanks, Danny. You do make a compelling case. And I don't recall all the reasons why council decided not to proceed a number of years ago. I think it was partially, maybe the volume of work of having bylaw staff having to police it and manage it. I think there was some concerns about maybe some of the concerns you've outlined here and provide some answers for. Certainly roosters, excluding them would probably make things an awful lot easier. And I guess I have to go back. My grandparents settled it in this community almost 100 years ago with nine kids, and relied heavily on their own garden and their own poultry, chicken, turkeys, ducks, whatever it took to make sure you could feed a family at that time. So I think there's great benefit in having a little bit greater food independence, whether it's backyard gardens, as you've leveraged and done well with, to the possibility of chickens. And I think it's overcoming some of the misconceptions possibly, and maybe some of the fallacies. And there'd still be that issue if the municipality was to decide to permit it. It's still that the responsibility of our bylaw staff to have to try to manage it. And so I think where staff could do some work, do some research. I think, as you said, the examples are out there. How would we apply those examples to our community, and how difficult would it be to manage this? I mean, if we had 10 or 100, it's probably not much of a burden. If it's 1,000, like you mentioned, where one every 4 homes in town has a backyard chicken coop, which might be a great thing to see. It's a matter of staff being able to have the capacity to manage through that. So I appreciate the presentation, obviously, and I think my preference would be that we add this for discussion at a future committee of the whole.
Councilor McGuire.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thanks a lot, Danny. It's a really well-researched presentation, and I think there's a strong social, environmental, economic argument for it. Excuse me. So I'm familiar with the program when I was living in Montreal. I had neighbors with chickens, and I didn't see any issue. When I think of the feral cat problem we have in Smith Falls, we're not out licensing unspayed or neutered cats. But when somebody comes with a new idea with the chickens, it's easy to get the unknowns and get our backs up. But I think that's a mistake, because from my experience, chickens are much less disruptive than dogs or cats or other pets that are normally accepted in a municipality. I've reread through the reports from 2018, and I think the presentation tonight really addresses some of those concerns. And I'm not sure that researching that information from 2018, it wasn't that long ago that it's out of date. So what I'd like to see is at a future committee of the whole, if we take the information from the presentation tonight, let staff look at other bylaws and come to us with a 1-year trial of how this could work, and see how it would work in Smith Falls. Because I think as much as we can research other communities, I'm not expecting, as much as it'd be great to see 1,000 backyard coops and that 800 or 600, whatever $1,000 savings, I wouldn't expect that. But if we could get some data on 5 or 10 or whatever the initial interest would be, I think that would help us make a really good policy going forward for 2025, 2026. So that would be my preference tonight.
Thank you. Councilor McKenna.
Thanks very much, Danny. Nice to meet you, and compelling presentation. I like how you're thinking globally and acting locally. It fits along with my line of thought. I agree with Councillor McGuire and the mayor that I think your timing is very good from my point of view, and I would really want to entertain this sooner rather than later. I'm wide open. I don't think it should be a pilot. I have enough information, and in my background, having been a farmer for quite a while, chickens and beef, I'm very comfortable encouraging us to get going on this. I think we're 10 years behind the time, or to get back to where we were. That's all we're doing. So I'm ready. Thank you.
Next, Councilor Brennan.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I was here in 2018, and we had this discussion, and I have read the reports from back then, and I'd like to put it back to staff to give another recommendation, because they did give a recommendation at that time, and part of the thing was the health unit weighed in on it, and there is concern from what I read from the email that we got, and I'd like that readdressed by the health unit, and also I'd like to get feedback from staff in terms of administration of this, and I'd like to give it some time to my phone can ring from my constituents and talk to them as well, because I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight, of course, but I'm more than happy to talk about it at a future COW.
Thank you. Councilor Quinn.
Thank you. I was raised in the country. I was raised on a farm, and I was raised where we had our own chickens and our own beef, and can they be noisy? Yeah, a little. They can. And I see all kinds of red flags here. Feral cats were mentioned. Guess who's created the problem with feral cats? Humans that don't want to look after them. So that's a big concern. The same with who will have to monitor the chickens and how many you have in a yard. That will come down to our bylaw. That's another issue, another expense for the town. I'm not saying that your idea is wrong. I'm just saying there's a lot of concerns here that would have to be looked at. One of the things, like, where would the chickens be slaughtered? Who's going to monitor that? These are all the kind of things that you have to think about, and you have to have the answers before we can say yes.
Pardon me, Councillor Quinn, but they would not be slaughtered. They would be purely for eggs. That is a common feature of the bylaw. They wouldn't be raised to be meat chickens, but solely for the egg component. That's the common standard I pulled out of the bylaws. And just for a moment, the 1,000 was not an optimistic guess at how many people would be in town. It was a number that would allow me to do mental math should you tell me your expected number of constituents who would be interested.
I mean, your whole idea of people going and growing their own food is a wonderful idea. I'm just not sure that having chickens in the backyard is going to be the answer. And I totally agree. How many young people think that milk comes from the grocery store? They have no idea where it comes from. There's all kinds of that type of thing that is lacking, that education. So I will agree that I think we need to bring this back to a committee of whole for a good, wholesome discussion, and we need input from our staff on this. And thank you. Thank you for coming. You did a great presentation. You had lots of information there. And I don't want you to think that I'm really all negative. I'm not. So thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your presentation. I came into tonight with an open mind, really interested on what you had to say. And I think it really hit home for me when you talked about food insecurity. And I can tell you from my day job that we're experiencing this firsthand, and I'm very concerned about the rate. And while some may say that a few eggs might not change that, I think it's a good step in the right direction. So I do look forward to the staff report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. I don't have anything to add to all of that. It was a well-done presentation.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McGuire?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted clarification on the direction from committee where it seemed like there was consensus to bring it back to a COW, but then there was a range on whether to bring forward a program or whether to bring forward another report.
I'll just propose we bring it back for discussion on how a program for Smiths Falls would be my preference. I agree with Councillor McKenna. I don't think a pilot would be necessarily the direction we'd have to go. You wouldn't want 100 families with hens having nowhere to go in a year if they had it, if we had to decide not to proceed with the pilot. I think if it's done right, we're not the first ones walking down this road. I think others have done it well. But I think it's also, like Councillor, as Quinn mentioned, a few concerns we would need to address. And I mean, I think there's also the education. I mean, majority of people may not know to begin to how do you build a coop, where do you buy a coop, where do you get your chicks, and how do you look after them, right? So I think we want to make sure it's going to be successful. We want to make sure there's a pathway to success. But my preference would be that staff research this, come back with a program, what it's going to maybe cost from an enforcement standpoint, what type of fee structure maybe we should have, restrictions. Where, I mean, do we want to permit it in Bellamy Farm where we've got smaller lots, or there are certain lot sizes? So I think all these factors have to be considered as to what would be appropriate. So that'd be my preference, and I guess if there's support for that.
Well, it appears as if we have enough thumbs up to go forward with that. So that's what we'll do.
And just to assist in the next bound, there was additional information I couldn't present at the end of my slides. Please pass that forward for further deliberations. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next. Do we have any CAO or director's verbal report?
Mr. Chair, we have two, and I promise they'll be brief. So let's start with Julia Crowder, our Manager of Economic Development and Tourism.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Just a few updates on some happenings in town. Heritage House Spring Carnival was a hit last weekend despite the cold weather and rain. There was about 200 people that came out for the event, which was really good. It was the first year for the Spring Carnival, so they did a great job. So thanks to staff at Heritage House. They also wanted me to mention that they still have 2 gallery shows going on, Glorious Colors and Recent Paintings, and staff are planning for the upcoming Beatles Mania exhibit event that will happen Saturday, June 1st. Today they also got their brand new walkway and patio finished, so thanks to community services staff for facilitating that. It's really great, it's beautiful, and it helps with our accessibility needs being met over at Heritage House. The Smith Falls Chamber of Commerce is working with the town and the DDA on the relaunch of the popular Shop Local subscription box program. The program will replace the former Marion Bright box program administered by the town in order to offer local products and services in one convenient box, not only during the holidays, but multiple times during the year. It also continues to support our partnership with local business support organizations and the business community. Over 60 boxes have been sold already, with all the profits going back to local businesses. This is a perfect Mother's Day gift, so we encourage the community and everyone to go out and buy a box and shop locally to support our community. I also wanted to mention today was the last of our 4-part community development webinar series for local community organizations. It included Community Economic Development 101, Strategic Planning for Organizations, Volunteer Development for Organizations, and then today was Grant Writing for Organizations. So thanks to Carrie Barlow, our Community Economic Development Coordinator, for facilitating those. Staff have also been working with the DVA to develop a new MOU, which we hope to bring to council in the very near future. And lastly, we'll be putting a job ad for the new tourism arts and culture coordinator, and looking forward to filling that position in early June as we enter full swing of the visitor season.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Grinke to talk about the emerging piece of provincial legislation.
Evening. One update for me this evening is on the provincial planning policy sphere. On April 10th, the province has posted Bill 185, the proposed Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act, which contains a variety of changes to the Planning Act and Development Charges Act. And we will report later on with a more wholesome explanation and evaluation for what each of these changes are, how they apply to us, and what they're going to do. But for now, we're just getting council a quick heads up that this is now released and in the pipeline. So I think, as you know, in the last couple of years, we've developed staff as well as our development community have learned a number of new practices and concepts, which we have reported to you, and those we're actually going to have to be unlearning. So, for example, under the Development Charges Act, a 5-year phase-in was introduced last year, which resulted in 20% reductions to development charges right off the bat, gradually increasing to the full rate. That 5-year phase-in is proposed to be revoked, which will enable municipalities to collect more of the revenues. Previously, the province has also established mandatory planning fee refunds if decisions on certain applications aren't made within a specified time period. That refund is proposed to be revoked as well because it did not appear to have achieved the desired results in terms of process. The bill proposes some changes to the appeals process, including removing many third-party appeals on zoning and OPA decisions. Public notice provisions are proposed to be changed, including allowing notices to be posted on municipal websites if there isn't an available newspaper. That's something that we have asked for, so that's a welcome change. There are a number of other changes proposed, including shortening the development charge fee freeze and site plan lapsing provisions that encourage approved developments to begin construction faster. And the minister is empowered to, is proposed to be empowered to make regulations that shelter additional residential unit provisions from Planning Act approvals. However, until these regulations are actually made, it's impossible to know whether there will be an impact. So the province has also released a new draft of provincial planning statement, which is the new name for a provincial policy statement, which planners have long known and understood, but at least keeps the PPS acronym. In action, the most consequential PPS changes from the In Effect 2020 draft that were originally proposed and summarized last year, a lot of those remain in place. They're not proposing to change those wholesale. They are proposing a number of more minor changes here and there. Obviously, the shape of the PPS will affect how we go about doing our official plan, especially as it relates to long-range growth planning. On first glance, the good news is that it appears this change will not have to cause us to change course at this early stage, and the flexibility was built into the RFP for this project for the exact purpose that should allow us to continue to proceed as envisioned. We expect to bring forward a recommendation for a contract award for that work at the next committee of the whole meeting. In terms of the changes to planning legislation and policy, the reality is we all operate in an evolving landscape. Bills 109 and 23, which came in the last couple of years, offered some pretty transformational changes to how we do planning, and it looks like Bill 185 is a little bit more evolutionary than transformational, and it actually undoes a couple of the things that didn't really work the way they were originally intended. So we are working through the process of understanding the implications, the ins and outs of each of these, and we will come back with a more wholesome report for council. However, at this point, we're just giving you a heads up of what's on the way and that this is coming down the pipeline. That's my update for this evening.
Councilor McKenna.
Thanks very much, Carol. My cursory review of that legislative change, there was one thing that jumped out at me. And I don't know if you've noticed it, and I'm not sure I got it right, but if a developer came to us and they own property on the fringe of any municipality, and they were requesting perhaps water and sewer hookup, that there was something, and I'm not sure I read it right, but he said that if the municipality didn't respond within a certain period of time or didn't respond to that request, that the developer had the right of appeal directly to go around us. So I don't know if you saw anything in there around that. So it was one of the highlights I pulled out of the newspaper that stuck in my little brain.
So that relates to settlement area boundary adjustment. So not, which often relates, so in this case, it wouldn't relate necessarily to the municipal boundary adjustment. Certainly if somebody were in one of our municipal neighbors and looking to proceed with a boundary adjustment there, then certainly there's that broader complexity of potential annexation.
So it's not that.
But certainly we do have areas within our own municipality that are designated for urban settlement, and then other areas within the town that are not. So certainly this gives the ability, if it carries forward and is approved as presented, to potentially give them a little bit more, those proponents a bit more of an opportunity to potentially enact a urban settlement area boundary dispute. That is one of the pieces that I will be having a closer look at and reporting back to council in case there are implications on our own settlement area boundaries.
Thank you. That's a great clarification and just as important. So I'm glad you're going to keep us informed on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. So next, committee of the whole consent reports. We don't have any, so we'll move on to priority issues with our CN Tower runner, Jason Barlow. And just to say congratulations on your 25-minute and 8-second run to the top.
Oh, thank you.
I believe I read it's 141 floors.
144.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was wrong.
And my daughter made it up this year as well, so it was a team effort.
Great. Okay, so this is about the quarterly report.
It is. So I'm pleased to be here to present report 2024-045, and it's the 2024 quarterly report number 1. So as you're aware, last year we started the quarterly reports, and I really hope that they've been useful throughout the year, so you guys are kept in the loop on what's going on, what we're doing, issues we're dealing with, the benefits of what we're doing, as well as a summary to help with the summary report at year end when you guys go over the 180-page reports that we must review. Some highlights from the quarterly report from this year. So as you'll see, our flow averages are around 3,300 cubic meters per day. If you recognize last year, our average for the entire year last year was 3,450. So we are just below that average, but with seasonal events and different things, we do expect the flows to increase over the summer and then kind of fall back into line in the fall. So as long as everything runs as it is without any major leaks or breaks or any new users that come on board, I expect those numbers to remain the same. Our non-revenue numbers are staying steady at the 33.9%. You'll note last year we ended the year with 33%. So we know there's leaks that are there, but we're at the point where they're not easily found and located. So there is some to do with meters because the meters are old and they do have some inaccuracies. So we try to account for some of that in our numbers. But we had some meters tested recently and they were well above the 6% that we had from the report last year when we talked about the meters and their accuracy. Hydro costs are up a little bit. That has to do a lot with the raw water quality. So you'll see the picture for the water plant. That's one that was sent around earlier. We've had a very poor raw water quality this quarter. Lots of color, lots of organic carbon. So it costs more to treat that water. So you'll notice there's increased chemical costs at the water treatment plant. That is for that reason. As well as when you deal with that, you're backwashing more. So you're using more pumps, more valves. So the electrical costs will also increase during that time frame when you're dealing with the water that needs to be treated and cleaned to make it potable for the users. Trihalomethanes, so the TTHMs, the reason we have that on the list is our rotating annual average was getting up 74, 75 micrograms per liter. The regulations state that the maximum is 100. And there's always talk about lowering those numbers in the future. And the number they were lowering it to would potentially be 80. So we'd be right on the verge. But we know a lot of those numbers came from our zebra mussel control. So we added chlorine to all that raw water before we were able to treat it and remove the organics. So as soon as you do that, you're creating the THMs or the precursors for the THMs further in the system. So by converting to the capital program last year with chlorine dioxide, we've been able to reduce that number because the chlorine dioxide does not create THMs as the old chlorine application points did. So it's a lower value. So that's a lot of why you see that number drop by 50% is the different treatment that we are using to accommodate for the THMs and those numbers. Lead sampling. It's kind of a shout out that we need volunteers for lead sampling every year. We have to do 23 samples. We did one residential sample in this quarter that came back clean. We just completed samples here at Town Hall, and those count as our samples. So we sampled Town Hall, and the numbers were trace amounts, so it's well below the maximum acceptable concentrations at both locations on the corporate services end and on the economic development end. So that's been tested, but we have volunteers out there that want their water sampled for lead. Give our compliance coordinator a call and we'll set up a time and have that sampling completed. Wastewater. So the wastewater flows, you'll see this average is higher than the average for last year at the end result. The reason is your spring, snowmelt, all those different things all correspond, rain events, to the flows. Our flows at 8,130 cubic meters per day are actually 30% less than this quarter last year. So without the snowfall that we had, we didn't have a big snowpack, fewer rain events. So we are noticing the reduction in the final flows at the wastewater plant, and mainly because of the events, but then we're also now seeing that non-revenue water that's not being put in the system. So you're seeing that 30% reduction that we saw on the water side as well. So that's that correlation between the two. We've also, again, like I said in earlier presentations this year, having a large influx of wipes, non-flushable wipes that aren't breaking down in our system. When I was here last time talking about the screen project, I believe, wipes were an issue, but we wanted to verify 100% that it was non-flushable wipes and not something else in the system. So we actually sent a sample of the fluff that we were getting from the system, as well as our sludge to Carleton University, and the lab there, at no cost yet, was able to analyze, and they told us that our problem was flushable wipes. They asked if there were any other municipalities having the same issue, and there isn't, because in our system, we heat the sludge to create the pellets. It's that heat process that is creating the fluff in our system. So at the lab, they said that it could have been a company that was distributing a different style or a different material or product of wipe that is now in the system. So it breaks down enough that you can't see it in the wastewater or the sludge, but as soon as we heat it, it creates the fluff, which plugs our screens and our filters and everything in our system. So staff right now are able to accommodate for what's happening, but it is a lot more work, like hours per day of cleaning, and that reduces our production time as well. So if we do ever run into issues where we're out for a long period of time, as their Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer knows that our sludge numbers costs for this year are already in excess of what our budget was, because we are having issues trying to figure out how we're going to deal with this problem. So I know Director McMahon has taken it upon himself in the near future to put a campaign together, and that's what Carleton University talked about, is getting a campaign that we can use from other municipalities and making sure that we make the residents of the town of Smith Falls and the users aware of the issues are caused when they do flush the non-flushable pipes in these products that need to go in the garbage, not in the toilet. So all that will come to fruition, hopefully, in the near future to kind of help resolve the issues that we're having at the facilities. And in this quarter, we had the leak in the tower. So there's a picture there of the crane. So this year, Drinking Water Week, I thank the mayor for making the proclamation for Drinking Water Week, May 5th to the 11th. And this year we will again have a barbecue on the Friday, May 10th, I believe is the Friday, from 12 to 2. Staff are going to have the same setup as last year with the barbecue, some tents to show the equipment, the different analyzers, stuff we use so that members of the public can come in, see what's going on, and they're looking at it. There is, the demand is having a quick tour of the facility. And on the tour, I'm going to turn control of the video over to RKP Productions. As I said, we started looking at a video virtual tour, and it is coming to fruition. And they have a little teaser for us before this goes on. So, Sean, if you're listening out there in the virtual world, it's your turn.
Thank you.
Get ready for an exciting journey into the world of water management. During Drinking Water Week, we're bringing you an exclusive 8-part video series that takes you behind the scenes at Smiths Falls Advanced Water Treatment Plant. Since its start in 1902, the Smiths Falls Water Commission has led the way in water technology for more than 100 years. Now, with over 62 kilometers of water mains, about 38.5 miles, they provide dependable water to all of the town's homes and businesses. Mark your calendars. We're releasing a new video every day starting May the 5th. This is your chance to see the incredible efforts that go into Smiths Falls water system. Make sure you join us for Water Week. It's going to be a splash.
Thanks, Sean. As promised, we're putting that together. So every day for Water Week, there'll be social media posts, but then this will all be also available on the website. So anyone can go see it at any time if they want to know what's going on at the Smiths Falls Water Treatment Facility. They can take a tour and then ask you guys all the questions on what they were seeing. So it's all been passed through communication, so they're aware that everything's going on. So it should be quite the week. I'm hoping that it keeps everyone involved. So that's my quarterly report for this quarter.
Councillor Quinn?
Thank you. That was great. And I think that's going to be absolutely awesome, that presentation. The one question I have, okay, we have these flushable wipes that are not flushable. They do not break down. That's wonderful for people to know. But can we start a campaign to sue these companies that are manufacturing them and putting on these packages flushable? I know.
Through the chair, I'm not sure how to answer. There is many different committees and representation in the water, wastewater industry that have been dealing with these issues for years. So we're not starting from scratch, but I believe through staff, Compliance Coordinator, and through Director McMunn, we'll find the best information possible to be able to put it out there to make sure that we educate the users of the systems to move forward and let them know not to flush them, to put them in the garbage disposal instead. And, companies are aware, but we have less control over what they produce. We have more control over what we have our residents do with those issues.
Anyway, just keep up the fight. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Panko?
Thanks, Jason. A couple of questions just for you to report. The coagulant use being up like 50% in the quarter. Is that really just because of the water quality, and that is because of essentially the low waters and what you're drawing into the system when you're with your intake?
Through the chair, yeah, that's 100%. The cost, the increased cost in the chemicals is all due to the lower water quality coming into the facility, and it is attributed to early in the year, the water levels in the lakes were extremely low, so they were sending us less fresh water from the Big Rito. Punamali Gate, if they open that gate up, the fresh water comes to Big Rito, really helps us in our treatment of the water coming in. As soon as they start lowering that flow rate, we get that swale, and we get the swampier, dirtier water that infiltrates the area, and that's what we have to treat. But that's why that plant was built. That plant was built to accommodate those. Those raw water numbers were put in place when this facility was constructed to make sure that this facility could handle that. Yes, it costs more with the chemicals and electrical, but the facility can handle the water quality coming into the facility.
A follow-up, and just related now on to the water pollution control plant. So we saw a big reduction in the overall flows for the first quarter of the year, but an increase in hydro usage. We're treating less flows, but we had more hydro usage. Can you explain that?
So through the chair, a lot of that deals with the blowers, which is a report coming up in the system where we don't have control over the speed of the blowers or how they are operated right now. And it all comes in another capital project to kind of create that efficiencies. And like hydro, you know, with heat, with the pelletizer, with different things with that process will also increase the electrical use of the facility. So because of all the extra stuff we're doing with the fluff could also be some of that cost.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McKenna.
Thanks very much, Jason. So my comment is mostly around your question around the quarterly reports. I think as a council member, when we were getting them once a year, you would work hard to understand what you were saying because it's complex. Getting them quarterly keeps it front of mind, and it's easier for me to acclimate to the report when it comes in. I understand them better. So through Director McManus, Morris, whoever your successor is, I hope that we're able to keep that pattern up. For me, it really helped, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay. Don't see any other questions or comments, so don't go anywhere. Just move on to the next one.
All right. Let's see if I grab the right one. Okay, so my next report is 2024-046. This report is to obtain direction from council to proceed with a sole source procurement of one high-speed turbo blower to replace one of the 3 blowers currently in operation at the wastewater treatment facility or water pollution control plant. As you all are aware, in 2017, the town engaged Honeywell to do the energy audit for all the facilities. They did a lot of upgrades at the wastewater and water facilities with lighting, a couple of VFDs for HQ pumps. But one of the items in that list was the upgrade of the blowers. So right now we use rotary low blowers, and one blower runs at 100% speed, 150 horsepower, 24/7. It doesn't slow down. There's no way to lower that number. If anything, if the requirements were there, you'd actually put another blower on, so you'd have 2 blowers running at 100%. There's no way to reduce that volume. So also within the service review for the wastewater facility completed in 2018-2019, that it was discussed in there that there is the opportunity to save money, reduce our carbon footprint, and reduce the electrical costs at the wastewater plant to deal with the upgrade of one of the blowers in our aeration system. So the aeration system, what it does, so you kind of understand the process, the water comes in through preliminary treatment through the screens. We settle out as many solids as we can in our primaries, and then it goes into our aeration tanks. The aeration tanks, we add some activated sludge from our secondary tanks, but we add oxygen. Bugs like oxygen. So the more oxygen they have, the more active they are in consuming all the solids and the different parameters in the wastewater that we want them to consume to remove from the water, so the water's safe going out the door for our final effluent. So that's kind of how that process all works. And air is a big part of that. With the high-speed blower, it gives us the opportunity to put in a blower that has lower horsepower. So right off the bat, if it runs 100% all the time, we're already saving money. It's still going to be able to accomplish the job that needs to be done, but we're running a 150 horsepower motor instead of or 100 horsepower motor instead of 150 horsepower motor 24/7. So there's savings there automatically. With the upgrade in the PLC project, we've also, within this, is to put in some online analyzers. The water treatment plant's full of online analyzers to look at everything. The wastewater plant, we haven't had that capacity. So being able to put in some DO sensors to monitor the DO in the aeration tanks, we could increase or lower the blower speed, which could ultimately save more money because you're running that 100 horsepower motor at 80% instead of 100%. So there's all those opportunities in that. There is a grant from Save On Energy, and we used the Sulzer high-speed turbo blower for the incentive for the grant. Sulzer came in and gave us the current numbers from the blowers that are being used right now in comparison to theirs, and gave us the information to be able to apply for the grant. And we have been pre-approved for a grant of $53,500. And that can go up or down depending on the savings once the blower and the installation is complete. We will rerun the numbers again, and that number could go up. If your savings are better than what they said, then you'll get a little bit more. But if they don't stand up to what is documented, then it could be a little bit less, right? So there is movement in that. It's not guaranteed $53,500, but it could be $60,000 because our first estimate in the 2024 capital was around $65,000. So it was a little lower based on the readings that we took, but that could again turn and increase with this upgrade. Also, you have the savings of 390 megawatt hours per year. I'm not sure how that all correlates into greenhouse gases or those kind of things, or carbon footprint, but I'm sure someone that we have on one of the committees would be able to plug those numbers in and tell us what those savings are. And in dollar savings, the payback, the return on investment for the blower is less than 5 years. So, it's $195,000 for the blower, but with the electrical savings, you're looking at a payback in 5 years for that part of the system that you're putting in place. So the recommendation is to authorize the sole source purchase of one high-speed blower at a cost of $194,361.91, including HST. And I guess that's my report. I pretty much stated everything there.
Councilor McGuire. Thanks. Yeah, what a report. It's got grants, it's got environmental savings, it's got sensors, it's got engineering. I think this kind of stuff is why we're really going to miss you when you move on. And but I really appreciate everything that you've done in Smith Falls, and I'm proud of our water system in a way I never was before, with the greater understanding and the way you guys have really brought everything up to 2024. So thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and Councilor McGuire started it, but I know you're going to be one more report, but at this stage I wanted to say thank you, because this is just, I guess, as you move on to other opportunities, your real final major report here is just, I guess, a reflection of the work you've done while you've been here. You've helped us move the processes forward. You've been very efficient. You've been very proactive, and helped us save money. And ultimately that impacts everybody in our community. Every ratepayer of the community is been, I guess, fortunate to have you in the position you've been in. You've made a difference to the municipality and to everybody out there. So we'll miss you. Great finish.
So are we going to have a thumbs up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you see that?
Next report with Jason.
All right. So my final report, 2024-047. This report is to extend the existing agreement with Mississippi Rideau Valley Conservation Authority for the Part 4 Enforcement Authority services under the Clean Water Act 2006. There is a typo in this report. I got stuck copying and pasting from previous reports and forgot to edit one line. So in the staff recommendations, I forgot that in here in the report it actually says for additional 3 years, but that is not the case. We decided to go with an open agreement so that it doesn't have to be renewed every 3 years. As you know, right now we're renewing it after the fact. It actually expired in December 2023, but there is a clause that within 180 days you can cancel if the municipality would like to cancel or not forgo with the service anymore in the bylaw that would be created for this service. So on that, what this does is it's the risk management official an office. We do not have anyone certified that I'm aware of within the town of Smith Falls currently, and we've always used the Mississippi Rideau Conservation Authority because they have the expertise to deal with that risk management and those issues. We have staff that sit on the Source Water Protection Committee, so they would be involved in the process as it goes forward. But based on the requirements from the Clean Water Act, prudent that we have them look after this for us. The fees had not increased substantially, and there was no increase in 2024. So the fee structure for 2023 that's in the report is the current fee structure. There's no increase to the fees. And I will leave it at that.
Getting a thumbs up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so 9.4, lift park lock control. I don't see Richard in the audience, so I assume it's you, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this evening I'm presenting report 2024-053 on behalf of Planner 1 Richard Grant, and this relates to the lifting of part law control to enable the creation of 6 blocks representing 26 townhouse units in the Bellamy Farm subdivision. So council's considered a number of reports over the last couple of years as these townhouses continue to develop, and this is the final planning instrument that's undertaken to enable their ultimate evolution into freehold units that would be sold and eventually occupied by the intended owners. So the recommendation in this case is that we pass the bylaw lifting the part law control provisions and upon its registration, creating these lots.
Go for it. Looks to me like we've got a thumbs up on that too. Thank you. All right, moving on to 9.5, the award of contracts for George Street reconstruction with Director McMunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of council. Before I start with the report, I would have included this in a director's report, but I see Jason's gone now, so you all stole my thunder to wish him well in his new venture in Lakeshore. But I wanted to note, and I did send out an email that we are having a little barbecue for Jason at the water plant on Thursday afternoon from noon till 1. So you're all welcome to come by and have hopefully not burnt offerings, but a burger and a hot dog, and just celebrate and send Jason off with a bang. So I understand he doesn't like cake, but he likes date squares, so we're having date squares instead of cake. So you're all welcome. So the report I have this evening is a report with respect to the reconstruction phase 1 of George Street. So that would be the 2 blocks between Strathcona and William Street West. We tendered this project. Public tender closed on April 1st at just before lunch. We had 4 tender submissions, so a pretty good response, I feel, to the tender that we put out. I would expect somewhere between 4 and 6 people would be bidding the work, and we landed at 4. On page 2 of the report, it'll note that we had tender submissions from Campbell's Trucking Limited, Core Civil Construction Incorporated, KCE Construction Limited, and TJL Construction Limited. Prices were pretty close. They ranged between 1.9 million at the low end up to just over 2.3 million, with the bottom 3 I would consider being really, really close together. So that tells me that that the tender was certainly competitive, and that we had 3 bids that were all generally close together. So with that, I'm recommending that we award the work to Campbell's Trucking Limited in the amount of $1,907,638.80, excluding HST. Obviously, the work is a reconstruction project, full depth reconstruction of the road, underground linear infrastructure being sewer separation. So we'll have a dedicated storm sewer, new sanitary sewer, and new water distribution system throughout the corridor. With that as well, we'll have replacement of services to property lines. So that would be municipal services, water and sewer. And then of course, new roadway, new curb, new sidewalks, all meeting AODA standards, and landscaping, reinstatement of driveways, private walkways, and front lawns. So typical to what we did with Catherine Street last year. and what we'll be finishing this spring with some of the landscaping works. Happy to take any questions through the chair.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Thanks, Director McMahon. I support your recommendation. Just for those watching tonight, could you give a quick reminder of how or why we chose George Street to be next in line for reconstruction?
Yeah, through the chair. So George Street, as we know, has a combined sewer. So we do have a combined sewer overflow unit at the bottom of Mill Street that outlets during heavy rain events. So anytime we get those significant rain events or spring heavy melt in the spring, the system gets taxed. It's a single pipe system, so it does convey not only sanitary septage from your home through that same pipe, but then it also collects all the storm water that runs and gets collected within the roadway and into the catch basins, which would normally be tied to a storm sewer, but in this case they're tied to one pipe. So we do have those combined sewer overflow events from that structure down on Mill Street that does discharge to the Rideau River, and that's reportable obviously through the Spills Action Center, through the ministry. So there's lots of, I wouldn't say pressure, but there is a little bit of pressure from the ministry that we deal with these types of things. And, going forward, any project that we're looking at reconstruction primarily north of the Rideau River, it does really put us in a good position because we have so much combined sewer network throughout town, particularly in the north side of the Rideau, that really does pair up with a lot of the grants and stuff that the different ministries are coming out with. So I think we're in a good spot going forward. Obviously, we've done really, really good with grant submissions as of late. Hopefully that trend continues in the future. So yeah, for the folks at home, that's primarily why we're picking George Street, to try to gain some capacity back in our water plant, but then also limit the nature of those outlets to the receiving water body.
Thank you.
Mayor Panko.
Thanks, Director McMahon. That answered one of my questions. The second one was, when will notification go out to all of the residents along there so that if they choose to upgrade their own service lines, it can be done at the same time as we are doing the street? But is that going to be part of it? Second one, can you also speak to the phasing of this? Because I think our plan is obviously not stopping at William on George, just so people who are further up George might understand what's coming next.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, yes, we do put out a notification from our engineering department for this project and others. We notify them well in advance that the project will be taking place, what the schedule looks like, who's going to be awarded the contract, and the scope of the work. We do note in there that if residents are contemplating any, not only service upgrades to their water and sewer on the private side, but also with upgrades, say from an oil furnace to natural gas, that they should be looking at that pre-construction or during construction as opposed to after construction. We don't want to go and cut a road to put in a new gas service if we can help it. Yes, so they are notified that if they're contemplating an upgrade to their service, now would be a good time during construction. That being said, the general contractor in this particular case, subject to being awarded here this evening, Campbell's would not be obligated to do that work at the time. They may make arrangements with Campbell to come in after the fact or during kind of the tail end of construction to upgrade from property line into the homes. But if it's not the general contractor that's on the project, they can certainly bring in a contractor of their choosing after the fact. So there is an opportunity during construction, but it'll be contingent on the general contractor wanting to do the work at the time.
Okay, and then our service line would end at roughly the property line, but inside the sidewalk. So in the future, if they want to do it, we're not having to impact our sidewalk, I guess.
That's right. In that area of town, there's probably a good solid 3 to 4 meters behind the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah. Or sorry, I should say 2 to 3, like somewhere in there. But there is a boulevard area behind the sidewalk for sure.
Okay.
They wouldn't be removing panels of sidewalk to facilitate that work. And to answer your second question about the phasing, yeah. So the whole project in itself goes from Strathcona to Gladstone. Phase 1 of this project is those 2 blocks that I mentioned before, from Strathcona to William Street West, with phase 2, again, subject to 2025 budget deliberations. The next phase will be those next 3 blocks to Gladstone in 2025.
Okay, thank you. And I support the recommendation, and it's great to see something come in under the forecasted budget.
Right.
All right, next we have Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. Thank you, Director McMunn. So when we're doing this upgrades, most of my questions have been answered here, but when we're doing these, we're going to have construction going on a piece of property right along there. Now, will the new services go into that property when this is being done? So we won't have to dig up the streets after the fact? Or a new service going in there? Like, do you know what kind of services they're going to need so you can handle?
Yeah, so I know the property you're talking about. They have yet to get going on that particular property, but they are aware that the road is getting reconstructed. And that'll be on phase 2. That won't be part and parcel to phase 1 construction, because we're going to William Street. We're not going to be going that extended distance to get to their services. We'll be stopping shy of that for this project. Now, that said, they can go ahead and they can upgrade that parcel of land with their development. They can tie onto the existing services that are there, with the understanding that we'll upgrade the services in the spring up to property line. Or sorry, not spring, but next year up to property line.
Is that construction not within those 2 blocks?
No, it'd be on, if I'm thinking of the right property, it's on the other side, just immediately north of William Street. Right, Carol? Main. So
George and Main, and it goes to William.
yeah, my daughter would tell me I'm not very street smart, because I get William and Main mixed up.
It's right across from the Anglican Church.
Yeah, I know where it is. So we've got
Strathcona, Main, and then
Strathcona,
Main,
and then William. Yeah, so it would be in those 2 blocks. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, if we're going to have the street all dug up, let's do everything all at once. So that new construction, get them so that their connects are in there.
Right.
And the other, when you're sending out this notice to the property owners, is there ever anything that gives them a feeling of how much it might cost for them to upgrade their own personal services? Like, is that something that can be done? And is there an incentive if they do it now while the street's dug up rather than after the fact?
Right, so through the chair, there's no incentive program that we have to supplement that work on the private side. So no, we're not supplementing the cost to do so. And the first part of your question was?
It was about like a cost, a general cost.
Right.
So okay, it might cost the homeowner $2,000 to do this. I'm just pulling a figure out of my head. So are they made aware of that? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, it's just a couple of pipes. It's not going to cost us very much money. But in fact, it does cost money.
Yeah, so through the chair, I understand the question. There's a lot of factors that come into play when someone estimates that work. It wouldn't be for the town staff to estimate that work, because at that particular point in time, we're not privy to the general contractor that's going to get the work and the amount of work that they have during the time. They could have other works elsewhere other than just this particular construction project. Not to mention the site-specific elements to upgrading that underground servicing. And I can think of a number of things that would contribute to the cost. One being, if the services are underneath a driveway or walkway, you've got the reinstatement of potentially concrete driveway, asphalt, interlock, whatever the case may be. Lots of times as well, the services go underneath porches at the front of homes. So of course that pipe needs to be daylighted underneath the structure. That can involve a lot of manual handwork, so that can drive the cost. So generally speaking, the contractor, even if we said, okay, we've got, let's say 15 properties that are interested in, upgrading their services on the private side, it'd be very, very difficult for them to come up with a singular cost to kind of blanketly cover all of the properties.
So just to follow up on that, what I'm thinking is, as a property owner, a lot of these people don't know where to go to get the information. So is that possible that they could be given a contact, or, you know, so that they can reach out and get some information before they try to make a decision that they really don't understand?
Yeah, so through the chair. So our correspondence that we deliver out to the residents within the street, they will be given the contact to Campbell's Trucking in this particular case, subject to approval this evening. Not only do we send communication out as well, but the contractor sends out different communications at different milestones through the project as well. One of those milestones being prior to the start of construction, so residents know what to anticipate in terms of timing, what they're to do with their garbage, their recycling for pickup and that kind of thing.
And just to follow up on that, and the reason I brought it up, because it's still stuck in my head, is, and you dealt with a particular resident, and it was on Beach Street, I think, and she was totally blown away by how much it was costing and what she was responsible for doing. So that's what I'm just kind of, let's eliminate as much of that guesswork as they can, and get them in touch with people that can give them some information.
Right. So through the chair, I think folks listening at home this evening, like I said, they've already received some notification from our office last fall that we would be doing this work come spring of 2024. So hopefully those that live within those two blocks, if they're contemplating a service upgrade, nothing to preclude them from going and doing the work prior to the start of construction. So they could have done this work over the course of last fall and or this spring, anticipating that the work will be starting this summer. So they could either do it ahead of time or after time, or hopefully maybe perhaps during construction with the general contractor.
Thank you.
Councilman Moyer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not to drag this on too much. I just, for me, doing the water service became a priority after I got my free water test. So I was hoping we could include an offer to get your water tested for free, and maybe let people know which services, if they have lead services along the corridor, because that might give further incentive for them to do it while the construction's happening. And then just, yeah, it's crazy that $8,000 per meter for new road is a lot of money. So I'm glad we're doing it, but yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, it is a costly proposition, and you've done the math. You're right, around $8,000 per linear meter for that type of corridor and that infrastructure. It's expensive, but I was pleased to see the pricing come in as it did. In my opinion, it's marginally just under market from what I expected it to be. So we have budgeted 2.5. I'm suggesting that we maintain the balance in that capital project for contingency. I don't expect there to be much of the way of things that pop up of the unknown for this project, but there's always that risk, particularly with rock. We've done our geotechnical work over there. We do boreholes every 50 meters or so up through the road corridor to inform on rock elevation. But as we know, rock can be up and down like a dog's tail. So it can be high in one spot, low in the next, in between those borehole locations. So that's a little bit of an unknown. That said, we generally estimate the rock pretty closely in my experience. So there shouldn't be too many surprises there. But yeah, to pay for things like geotechnical and materials testing throughout the project as well. So I anticipate we'll have a substantial amount of money left over at the end of this project, to the tune of probably $200,000 or $300,000.
Well, it appears to be as if the majority of people are going to support the staff recommendation. So we'll address that.
And I should have mentioned too, Mr. Chair, that in the report we did have provisions in the contract that the contractor has to start by the 20th of May. So I suspect I do know we'll be sending an award letter tomorrow. We do have a council meeting this evening. This will be on the council agenda. So we will send the award tomorrow. Campbell's Trucking, as we know, they have to button up Catherine Street. So there's still some work over there to be done, but there will be they'll be aiming at presume to get started on this project in and around the 20th, if not sooner.
Okay, great. Well, just from living in that neighborhood, I can assure you, everywhere you drill a hole, you're gonna find bedrock. Anyhow, so that's that. How about the pavement parking program report?
Yeah, so quickly, this report wouldn't, if we were within budget, this report, as well as others, don't necessarily come in front of council. We do have a process through our procurement bylaw where we've developed a procurement disclosure form that gets drafted by my office. We send it off to the CAO's office for review and approval for things that are under $150,000 and within budget. This particular annual project is coming in front of council this evening because we did come in over budget. In the 2024 operating budget, we had budgeted $45,000 for the annual line painting and pavement marking program. And as you can see here in the recommendation, our low price came in at $58,631.50, excluding HST. So we typically do fairly well on our estimating. This one, it's from our office, it's a case of we were simply going by off previous years' dollar amounts. We do feel as though because the prices we got two bids on this particular project, one at $58,000 and change, one at $62,000 and change. I believe these numbers do represent a bit of a market correction over the last number of years with line painting, particularly with AccuLines, as they've done our work for the last number of years. The previous contract we had with them, we did have extension provisions in there for three-year extensions from the previous year that it was, or from the year that it was awarded. So we've exercised that over the last number of years and administered that through the procurement disclosure form through the CAO's office for approval, being within budget. But this year we're over budget, and we didn't have that provision anymore in the contract, as that those extensions had lapsed. So here we are, bringing it back to council for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we're getting the thumbs up.
Okay, great, thank you.
So next we're moving on to Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report brings forward the Municipal Heritage Committee's recommendation regarding the demolition and removal of the former water treatment plant at 25 Old Mill Road. About a month ago, Council made the decision to advance a claim with our insurer following the fire at the building last year, which... Okay.
You can go ahead. It should have been Julia that came up.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not in a rush.
Okay. Advance a claim with our insurer following the fire at the building last year, which will result in the complete demolition and removal of the building on the site. The property at 25 Old Mill Road is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, which means that it is identified in a designation bylaw as containing cultural heritage or interest, in this case associated with its contextual value to the town's history. Under Section 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Council must formally consent to a request by an owner, any owner, for the removal or demolition of a structure on a designated property. A heritage authorization forms applicable law, which must be satisfied before the CBO can issue a demolition permit. Before authorizing the demolition, Council must consult with the Municipal Heritage Committee. The Act does not say how consultation is to occur, and the final decision is ultimately with Council's. In practice, any proposals to alter or demolish a structure on a designated property is brought forward for a discussion and recommendation at a meeting of the Municipal Heritage Committee, and then that is brought forward to Committee of the Whole for consideration. Council's authorization is typically carried forward in a resolution. The Act allows for Council to establish whichever conditions are deemed appropriate to accompany the ultimate decision. The Municipal Heritage Committee has discussed this property a number of times over the last year, with feedback being brought forward for Council's consideration. The MHC's resolution was not intended to be framed such as that it recommended demolition, but rather acknowledged the situation that we are in and essentially express a statement of principle in recognizing the cultural heritage landscapes that this property is a part of, and support a vision that whatever is constructed there in the future is compatible with the landscape and, where possible, pays homage to it in terms of materials and designs. The committee recommends that if council were to pass a resolution authorizing the demolition, the council establishes the following conditions, including salvage of any materials that we can, that are feasible, the detailed documentation and recording of all cultural heritage resources, the establishment of appropriate planning tools to establish the expectation of development sympathetic to the local heritage context, and finally, that they be consulted before any design is finalized. The drafting of the resolution pondered what those planning or Heritage Act tools might be, but ultimately it is too early to get into that level of prescription, with the final wording of the resolution seeking council's direction for staff to initiate that conversation while we still own the property and are negotiating a sale. This staff report and the recommended wording in the resolution is brought forward on behalf of the Municipal Heritage Committee. And as the staff liaison to the committee, I'd like to acknowledge the work, passion, and care of the committee on this file and their diligence in as they fulfill their mandate as it relates to this. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Director Clark as the lead facility staff for the time and the work she has taken to meet with staff, as well as the Municipal Heritage Committee to discuss the process and the operational elements. And certainly Director Clark's work and feedback has been very much appreciated. At this time, given Council's direction on March 11th relating to insurance, our recommendation is that we do proceed to the resolution as required under the Ontario Heritage Act, and our recommendation is that the resolution be accompanied by the conditions as outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Carl. Any comments, questions? Councilor Miller?
Thank you, Manager Granke and Manager Clark, Director Clark, and thank you to the Heritage Committee for their advice and consideration. I support the recommendation, but I did have a bit of a question. Could you give me an example of what would be deemed appropriate planning tools as referenced in bullet 3 of your recommendation, just when it comes to setting expectations with the developer?
Certainly, and there are one potential approach is through the establishment of a holding zone that outlines certain expectations that would need to be satisfied before council can pass a bylaw to lift the holding zone. There's also the potential that we can examine through, say, a development agreement or a heritage easement, certain items that we would be looking at. The path forward has not been determined yet. Certainly, we're very early on at the stage. We don't know what the ultimate intent for the site is, but those are the sorts of elements. Potentially a development agreement that's outside the. We wouldn't have a site plan approval, and that would be much later in the process. But some sort of agreement that outlines steps that need to be taken in the future.
Thank you.
Councilor McGuire.
Thanks, Carl. I'm wondering, we haven't received a demolition permit yet, have we? Or an application for a demolition permit?
So I can't confirm whether or not we've received one, but we would not be in position to issue it at this point.
Through the chair, is it unusual to be passing this now before the application's been received for the permit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's at the end of the day, this would be one ticket of applicable law. There's a variety of other pieces that would need to be done before the demolition permit is approved. So whether the application is finalized at this stage or not, in terms of the staging, I wouldn't, in my mind, it wouldn't make a big difference. This is the approval of the resolution is something that would need to happen before a demolition permit would be deemed complete, as an example.
So does this need to be completed before a demolition application can be made?
The resolution would need to be adopted by council before we can deem it complete. So whether it's made or not, I'm not sure if it's made, and perhaps Director Clark can speak to the staging of that, but we would not be able to deem it complete. We wouldn't be subject to any of the timelines under the act until it is deemed complete.
Okay, and just sorry, last question through the chair. What's the advantage of passing it tonight versus passing it in the future when the application's in place?
Well, I think at this point, through you, Mr. Chair, it becomes it is essentially an administrative detail and a prerequisite, and it just gives us, we've received the request to proceed with this from the Department of Community Services. So at this point, we're actioning it, and it becomes one step that needs to be completed. And certainly I'd defer to Director Clark as it relates to timelines and the staging of that end of the process.
Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on the three options being presented to council. Your first one, which is the recommended one, it says that all stone masonry. So there's two butt ends to those buildings. It just seemed like everything there is going to be collected, not just the brick and the stone, because it says all. So I just want to be clear that it's very broad. I assumed it was the original stone building and then the brick building right beside it, but there's two butt end buildings. I don't want to collect, and I assume the Heritage Committee didn't want to collect the garage masonry and lumber out of there.
So I think thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so the intent, and Councillor McGuire can clarify as well as the council representative on that committee, and the focus certainly based on the resolution is the heritage defining elements of the structures be salvaged and stored. So I don't think the intent would not be that something that was not part of a character defining element or sort of the appurtenances, we would not be able to save and salvage everything. And I don't think that was, I certainly agree that I don't think that was the intent of the committee, but ultimately what we can and what is reasonably feasible. I think emphasis on the brick, the stone would be predominant.
If I may, Mr. Thank you. That does, as long as I agree, I just wanted to be, I don't want to get into the middle of find ourselves in the middle of demolition and somebody try to stop and say, well, wait a minute, we're not saving something that I thought we were saving, or it'd be nice to be really clear so that there's no upset or, disappointed people. So that's great. If that's the intention, then I'm supporting the recommendation.
Yes.
Thank you. And through Mr. Chair, this is a recommended motion that's being brought forward, and certainly we can, council can consider a friendly amendment to the resolution to clarify that intent, if that would be helpful.
I'm not suggesting that. Thank you.
All right. Next we have Councillor Brennan.
Thanks, Carl. And I support the recommendation and Councillor McKenna asked the question that I was going to ask about, because it seemed to me all stone masonry, but you've got it sort of qualified with heritage defining elements. So I would think that common sense would tell us what is worth salvaging and what's not worth salvaging. The other question I had, and I know that as I understand it, the insurance agreement, or the insurance says they will be demolishing and carting away materials. So in effect, they own the material. So we don't know what the cost of that's going to be. So I'd be interested to know, and I would hope that it's modest, but it doesn't really, as the report says, the financial implications to be turned through negotiations with the insurance provider. So I hope it's not like a blank check that we're going to buy everything for whatever the cost is. But other than that, I think that this is a step that has to be taken, as you said, Carl, in terms of our, a designated property that needs to be taken down. So we need to pass a resolution to get that going, and I'm all for that.
Mayor Panko.
Just circling back to Councillor McKenna's comment, the dialogue that happened with that, I think we better served by having more clarity and have it better defined. Because we say heritage defining elements. the entire site is classified heritage. And heritage defining elements is quite subjective. So I might look at it and say the windows in the south building that was manufactured in the 1950s is heritage. Should we try and preserve those windows for future use? Or, I mean, that entire end is, I guess most of it would be, well, it's all solid brick, I think. Should that brick be recovered as well as the other brick portion and the stone portion? And I see there's probably merit in recovering that brick and reusing it, but it's a very large building. And I think there are probably homeowners in town or building owners in town who would maybe someday love to have access to some of that brick should they have to do some repairs in their own homes. It probably is a match. But I think we need to have some clarity, because otherwise I think we run the risk of having problems somewhere along the way here where someone says, well, that should have been preserved, and someone else says, well, no. So I think I don't know if we know this has to be done, but it's also maybe we should go back to the Heritage Committee and ask them what they mean more specifically. So what sections? Are we referring simply to the original 2 sections? Or is the intent to recover materials from the south end? I can't see us recovering anything from the garage or the cinder block on the north end. But I think we need some clarity around it, my personal feeling.
Councilor Moyer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree. I think there's 2 things right now that I think make this worth deferring. And the first is that we don't have an application for demolition. So by not pushing this tonight, we're not delaying the process. We're not slowing anything down from my understanding of it. But we are creating a precedent that I find worrisome, especially when I think of buildings like the old Hydro building, to start agreeing to terms of demolition before the demolition permit's been received. It throws off the order that this would usually happen if it was not the town-owned building. So for that reason, I'd like to see it deferred. Excuse me. And I think there's some good points brought up with the heritage defining elements. I think we can dial those in. The big thing I think that's holding us back from being able to define them outright is knowing what the insurance company is going to charge us for recovery of materials and what the scope of that is. And until they get back to us with more information on that, it's great for us to pass this stuff, and it sounds, you know what I mean, it feels good, but we really don't know how feasible any of it's going to be. So yeah, I'd be okay receiving it for information tonight, bringing it back to the Heritage Committee to try to get a better idea of what are the must-saves, and hopefully we can get more information from the insurance company of what the cost associated would be.
I'm going to go to Councilor Brennan next, and then you.
Yeah, I think those were sort of the points I was making as well. However, if I read the motion that we have that for council is pretty broad, other than to say it's pretty short. Authorized demolition of structures located at 25 Mill Road, and then you could amend that somehow. It says subject to conditions as recommended by municipal heritage outlined in the report. Could you not just say something subject to further consultations with the Municipal Heritage Committee? Pass it as a motion as that. Or the other question, I guess, is what the timeline that we're looking at. If this is needed to get a demolition permit, then you can clarify that for me, maybe, if this is a step that has to happen. But I don't see why we can't just amend that motion there a little bit.
Would you be able to clarify that, CAO?
Let's give it a crack. So no, a demolition permit application has not been made because the insurer, IPI, has yet to award the work to a demolition contractor. We hope that will occur very, very soon. So we wanted to dispense of this criteria for the permit, so we're not holding up the contractor once they make application. But I would say that this is an important step in the sequencing so that we can provide direction to the insurer and therefore the contractor as to what the town's expectation is. We were very forthright and very clear with IPI from the beginning. It's a designated site. there is a heritage value and importance to certain elements, and that we would be insisting that they be respected. This resolution allows us to confirm what we've been telling them verbally all along. So even though we don't have an application, I would suggest this is going to set the stage for the work that their contractor will eventually do on the site. I would say in addition that it's council's prerogative to decide. The Heritage Committee provides advice, which they have, but ultimately it's council's decision. And so, yes, we do need clarity. We do not want to get in a position where someone believes a cinder block from 1962 is heritage and we should be saving it. If that's the case, great, but we need to know that clearly before before the contractor mobilizes on site. So I would agree that perhaps we need more clarity here, but I wouldn't want to delay this too long because we need to give this guidance to the insurer so the contractor knows precisely what's expected of them. In terms of the cost, all I can say is we're working actively with the insurer to make sure that the heritage elements, the masonry heritage elements, are retained by the town for a nominal amount. We'll come back and confirm that once we finish our negotiations. But this is an important piece in pulling all of that, pulling all the scope of work together for the contractor.
Okay, Mayor Panko.
We go to Carl first.
Oh, Carl. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it relates to providing some clarity on the first point, I think one option that council can consider is more specifically tying it into the heritage defining attributes that are listed in the 2022 bylaw. So that defines certain features, architectural features, some of the construction methods on each of the buildings on the site. And of course, some buildings have more character defining elements, but that potentially that could be an approach that council may wish to look at if you're looking at adopting a resolution this evening.
Yeah, so I suggest if that can be circulated to council, the Heritage Committee maybe has seen it, I'm not sure. But we have a chance to all review that, as well as maybe I'll take a walk down there and take a look at it with that information in hand, and then be prepared, maybe at our next committee of the whole meeting, to make a final decision on what we believe are the heritage defined elements. Is that reasonable?
What's everybody think? Councillor Quinn?
I think we need to get moving on this. This has been standing there looking ugly for long enough. And the other thing is, what if they come back to us and say, okay, you want the heritage stone and you want the heritage brick, but this is the cost and it's too much. Then we can say, no, we don't want it. Or we can negotiate that price. Like, we're not committing ourselves to buying this back from them. We're just saying we're interested in it once they give us a price, right?
In essence, yes. But I think it's best that we be clear with them on what our expectations are at the outset. So I think better definition, and if we want to go back to the heritage evaluation that was done, that's I think a really good starting point. I'm just recalling from memory if it's detailed enough to distinguish a concrete block from a wooden window sash. Is it that granular?
It is relatively granular. I can certainly circulate the bylaw for council's consideration. It was refreshed in 2022. We updated all of our heritage designation bylaws.
So Mr. Chair, I think given the mild case of uncertainty we're experiencing here, that we should bring this back and make a more surgical assessment of what needs to be saved and what does not.
So is everybody in favor of waiting to have it clarified and moving it to a future count? Okay, That's what we're gonna do. All right, so up next is Julia with the provincial funding transfer agreement.
Thank you. Good evening again. Through you, Mr. Chair. The Small Business Advisory Center has been in operation since the 1980s, and their core services include providing information, training, and support for regional entrepreneurs across Smith Falls, Leonard County, and parts of Leeds and Grenville County. The report before you is with regards to the execution of a payment transfer agreement with the ministry. This is an extension, a one-year extension from the previous two-year contract. The funding amount has not changed, or the scope of the agreement itself. It's pretty self-explanatory. I just wanted to give an update on 2023 and the activities of the Small Business Center, since it wasn't included in the report. In 2023, the center received over 1,400 inquiries and conducted 310 consultations with businesses, potential businesses, to discuss startups, expansion, purchasing, hiring, and funding. Cindy hosted 24 webinars and 6 in-person workshops with a total of 974 attendees. We're part of the Small Business Advisory Center of Ontario, which serves a hub of 45 existing SBECs. Part of 2 of their signature programs, the Summer Company Plus, that supports students looking to be entrepreneurs, as well as Starter Company, that saw 12 registrations and 11 participants who successfully obtained grants totaling $55,000 to support new business startups in our region. In 2024-2025, intake for that program will be promoted later this year, and hoping to be able to support another 12 to 13 candidates. In early 24, already this year, the center has hosted 11 small business webinars, co-hosted the International Women's Day event with Leeds Grenville Small Business Advisory Center in Kempville with 144 attendees, and will be part of the judging panel for an upcoming Rideau Lakes Business Awards. I wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge Cindy James and her 20 plus years of service and congratulate her on another successful year supporting our business community.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Thumbs up. Thank you. Committee, board, and external organization updates. Don't see any. We've received some correspondence items. One from, it's a resolution from the town of Lincoln about funding libraries and museum, and it's for council's review and consideration. The other one is a resolution from the town of Fort Erie, Ontario Heritage Act, subsection 27, and in brackets 16 amendment. And it's been supported by the Municipal Heritage Committee, and it's also for council's review and consideration. So do you want to bring that forward, Councilor?
Yeah, I suggest we put that on for a Cal meeting and talk about it, and we can do a resolution.
Councilor Miller?
I would just like to comment too that our libraries, and it's in this letter, haven't seen an increase in 25 years, which is pretty alarming from the province. You know, they haven't been able to add to programs, all of those sorts of things. So I would support a letter to go along with that advocacy. Sorry, it's late and I'm losing my train of thought, but whether we add that to a cow or whether we need any information or just all of us nodding, saying, yes, let's support it.
So is everybody in favor of bringing this to a future Cal meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. All right. So that's the end of that. Now we're going to be moving into a in-camera closed session with a litigation update. So I need a mover and a seconder to move it. Okay, moved by Councilor Miller, seconded by Councilor Quinn. That council and corporation of the town of Smith Falls, as provided in section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, move into a closed meeting at 7:04 p.m. to discuss a litigation matter. All in favor? Hopefully, we won't be too long. We're now back. Thanks for waiting. Sorry we took so long. The Rising report is that staff was given direction on a litigation issue. So next we're going to move to notice of motions, which we don't have any. So I'm going to need a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Councillor Brennan, that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 7:28 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? Carried.
2 minute, or maybe not even. Okay, 2 minute break then.
So Sean, under your mayor's announcements, if we could, I did put a note on the council agenda that items could be deferred depending on the outcome of committee of the whole, but if we could formally defer 9.4.
Okay.
You sure we can't do a consent to wrap this up into one?
Wait a while.
I didn't have that much notice to throw together a consent agenda.
Patience is one of my virtues.
Oh, good. Okay, because things don't always go as planned around here. Chris, you the seconder for the agenda?
Sure. I will.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to the special meeting of Smiths Falls Town Council for Monday, April 22nd, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:30 p.m. and start with our land acknowledgement. On April 22nd, 2024, we acknowledge that the sacred land in which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and has rich and indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might be here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. As for approval of the agenda, and we understood there will be some changes to the agenda based on the outcome of the committee of the whole meeting. So just concurrence that we will remove item 9.4, which deals with the Heritage Act authorization for 25 Old Mill. So with that removal, I'll turn to Councillor McGuire for motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson that the April 22nd, 2024 special council meeting agenda be approved as amended.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the April 22nd, 2024 special council meeting agenda be approved as amended. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'll ask for disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest in general nature thereof. I see none. Approval of minutes with Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, that they moved by myself, second by Councillor Robinson, the minutes of April 8th, 2024, and April 15th, 2024. Council meetings be received and filed.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the minutes of April 2024 and April 15th, 2024 council meetings be approved, received and filed. All in favor? Carried. Any reports from any members of council this evening? Yes, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'll just be very brief, but on the Heritage House, and I know Director Clark was here to talk about the walkway, and it's beautiful, but I just wanted to mention that, and people will be interested in this, that as council will be aware, the trailer and the equipment for Movies Under the Stars was stolen last year, and that has come under insurance, and they're well on their way to acquiring new equipment. And so they expect that Movies Under the Stars will be going forward this year, July and August. So that's great news.
Very good.
Just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Any further reports? Seeing none, I've got a couple of announcements. Just so the public's aware, we have no meeting scheduled for next Monday, April 29th, as it's fifth Monday of the month. And quite possibly no meeting scheduled for May 6th, but of course, as we know, that may change in the next couple of weeks. I have 3 proclamations. I'll come back to those at the proclamation section of the meeting. And the national, just another announcement, I guess, National Day of Mourning, April 28th each year. Ceremony will be held in Smith Falls between 6:30 and 7 next to the Rita Canal Museum by the memorial for the National Day of Mourning. And it's hosted by the Lanark District Labor Council. Anyone, any member of the public would like to attend. And I got one other presentation to make tonight, and we're excited to announce and present this certificate. So Mayor and Council extend congratulations and best wishes to the Air Force Association of Canada in the recognition of their 100th anniversary in Smith Falls. And thank you for the long-lasting commitment to cadets and our community. Of course, we're blessed to have a very strong cadet corps, which has been part of our community for probably the better part of that 100 years. And
the association started in 1953 here.
Okay, so we're looking at 71 years for the cadet corps. So that's wonderful. So I want to make a presentation, if we can.
I'm a former cadet. Just want to fully put that out there.
Look what happens to former cadets.
That's right. We'll fall.
Well, I have a personal invitation to give each of you.
Okay, wonderful.
Would you please share it with your family and friends?
Yes.
And if you have a business, to post it.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Chris. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Jenna.
Thank you, Peter.
Oh, Peter. Jennifer. Dawn, for your story. Hi, Mr. Brennan. Did finally meet you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
And I'm happy to present you with a certificate. We can take a picture.
Oh. We get a certificate
Yes.
for us.
Yes, so congratulations. And
Oh, thank you.
thank you. It's been shaping young minds and making
Very
great
important, yes.
70 plus years now.
And our new location is right across the street from my high school. And I've already talked with the receptionist, so I want to get in there and meet the kids and
Awesome.
drag them in.
Very good.
Perfect, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And just the association, Nicole.
Well, thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you.
And sorry for people to Okay, I've also got a few proclamations to read this evening. First is Economic Development Week, May 6th to 10th, 2024. And whereas Economic Development Week is an international campaign created by the International Economic Development Council to increase awareness for local programs that create jobs, advance career development opportunities, and increase the quality of life. Whereas economic development is a programs, policies, and activities that seek to improve the economic well-being and quality of life for our community by creating and retaining jobs and providing a stable tax base. Whereas during Economic Development Week, Smith Falls businesses and residents are invited to attend networking events and programs to learn more about the services available to support local business growth. Whereas economic development is a vital component to our success as an internationally competitive and supportive municipality for businesses. Whereas we leverage strong partnerships with the Smith Falls and District Chamber of Commerce, Smith Falls Downtown Business Association, Small Business Advisory Center, Valley Heartland, Community Futures Development Corporation, and our other economic development organizations who work together with the town to foster a thriving and prosperous community. Now therefore be resolved that I, Sean Panko, Mayor of the Town of Smith Falls, do hereby proclaim May 6th to 10th, 2024 as Economic Development Week in the Town of Smith Falls. And just for the public's information, if you are tuning in, Monday, May 6th at noon will be a lunch and learn, labor market information and job trends. And this webinar will provide service delivery partners with an overview of Service Canada's programs and services geared to job recruiters and job seekers. To register, it's online, or check the town website for information on that. As well, there is a lunch and learn Service Canada overview for newcomers on Wednesday, May 9th, and a Community Economic Development 101 in-person workshop. So Friday, May 10th, from 11 to 2, free lunch will be provided at Valley Heartland Innovation at 91 Cornelia Street in Smith Falls. Again, that's going to be an in-person on Friday, May 10th for a Community Economic Development 101 in-person workshop. Moving on, I have a couple other proclamations. It's also Community Living Month, whereas Community Living in Ontario, founded in 1953, is a nonprofit leader providing a provincial voice for people who have an intellectual disability, their families, friends, and support providers across Ontario. Whereas today, they proudly advocate on behalf of more than 100,000 people while championing the inclusion efforts of 119 member organizations. Whereas May is Community Living Month, a province-wide annual awareness campaign to promote true inclusion for people with an intellectual disability and their families. Whereas Community Living Ontario promotes positive change through public policy and advocacy and provides expertise and resources to decision makers, educators, local members, families, and self-advocates. Now therefore be resolved that I, Sean Panko, Mayor of the Town of Smith Falls, do hereby proclaim May as Community Living Month in the Town of Smith Falls. And finally, National Police Week. May 12th to 18th, 2024, committed to serve together. Whereas National Police Week began in 1970 as a way for the police to connect with their communities and to increase awareness about the services they provide. Whereas police services across Ontario and nationwide celebrate Police Week annually to honor and thank the work that the frontline police officers, 911 communicators, civilian staff, and all members of the Ontario Police Services do to keep people safe and healthy. Where the Smith Falls Police Service has provided excellent, professional, and friendly policing to the residents of Smith Falls since 1887. Whereas the role and objectives of the Smith Falls Police Service in our community include deterring criminal activity, improving road safety, ensuring critical incident, major event, and emergency preparedness, protecting vulnerable members of the community, developing partnerships that focus on prevention, and increasing public education. Now therefore be resolved that I, Sean Panko, Mayor of the Town of Smith Falls, do hereby proclaim the week of May 12th to 18th, 2024 as Police Week in the Town of Smith Falls. And further, this year we recognize the oath officers proudly take to be committed to serve communities who want and expect the police to keep them safe. And that's it for the proclamations. We have no consent agenda tonight. We have a number of motions and bylaws. We're going to start with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls receive the 2024 Utilities Quarterly Report, number 1, January, February, March, number 2024-045 for information.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
Yep, we had a great report from our departing manager, Water and Wastewater, Jason Barlow, and we're going to miss him. And he's really been spearheading this we used to get it yearly, and now we have been getting it quarterly. So it gives us a great understanding of how we're saving money, which in his case he does a lot of. So I want to thank Jason for his service, and look forward to whoever we replace him with, which will be difficult.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No, it's moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Quinn. The Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls received the 2024 Utilities Quarterly Report, number 1, around January, February, March, 2024-045 for information. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Miller, you're up next.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint the Mississippi Rideau Valley Conservation Authority as Risk Management Official and Risk Management Inspector as per part, now here's my Roman numeral test, 4 that, as per Part 4 Enforcement Authority under the Clean Water Act 2006.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Miller?
Thank you. This is to extend an existing contract with the skilled staff of the Conservation Authority for source water protection risk management.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that the Council of Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint the Mississippi Rideau Valley Conservation Authority as a risk management official and risk management inspector as per Part 4 Enforcement Authority under the Clean Water Act 2006. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Quinn, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls award contract 24-PW-002 for the 2024 pavement marking program to AccuLines and Signs, Inc. And further, that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract agreement with AccuLines and Signs, Inc. for the amount of $58,631.50, excluding HST.
Thank you. Further discussion?
This is something that we do on a regular basis. It came back to council because, like so many other things, the price has gone up a bit from what we had budgeted for, so we have to seek approval of it again.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Quinn and seconded by Councillor Robinson. The Council of Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls award contract 24-PW-002 for the 2024 pavement marking program to AccuLines and Signs, Inc. And for the council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with AccuLines and Signs, Inc. The amount of $58,631.50, excluding HST. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Brennan.
Really? Oops.
Oh, sorry, remove 9.4. My mistake.
Yeah.
Almost got you off guard, got myself off guard. Okay, that's it for motions.
Yeah.
On to our bylaws. Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a one-year funding transfer agreement extension with the provincial government in the amount of $181,666 to support the Smith Falls, Lanark County, and Leeds and Grenville Small Business Advisory Center be received and read a first time, taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a one-year funding transfer agreement extension with the provincial government in the amount of $181,666 to support the Smith Falls, Lanark County, Leeds and Grenville Small Business Advisory Center be received, read a first time, and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, please, Councillor.
Thank you. This is, I believe the last contract had a one-year extension availability to it, and we're just executing that one-year availability with the provincial government.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I can have a third reading, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a one-year funding transfer agreement extension with the provincial government in the amount of $181,666 to support the Smith Falls, Lanark County, and Leeds and Grenville Small Business Advisory Center be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10-540-2024.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a one-year funding transfer agreement extension with the provincial government in the amount of $181,666 to support the Smith Falls, Lanark County, and Leeds and Grenville Small Business Advisory Center. Be now read the third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10540-2024. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor McGuire, you're up next.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that a bylaw to sole source the purchase of a high-speed turbo blower from Sulzer Limited for the water pollution control plant and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Sulzer Limited in the amount of $194,361.91, including net HST, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to sole source the purchase of a high-speed turbo blower from Sulzer Limited for the water pollution control plant and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Sulzer Limited in the amount of $194,361.91, including net HST, be received, read a first time, and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, please.
Never been more excited to bring a blower proposal to council. It's no, this is a great story. It's under budget. It's 50 horsepower less than the existing blower, so it's going to use less energy. We're expecting it to save about $50,000 a year. We've been pre-approved for an energy saving grant for roughly $50,000. That'll depend on the final costs. And what this does is the blower aerates the water at the water pollution control plant before it goes through the rest of the processing, so that the dissolved oxygen count stays high, and that helps the bacteria break things down. And we're adding a dissolved oxygen sensor to it, so the blower will only have to run as required, which will lead to further savings. So great story all around, and thank you to Mr. Barlow for getting it done before he leaves.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I see relief that Councilor McGuire providing a technical report on this tonight. Thank you. I can have a third reading, please.
Myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna, a bylaw to sole source the purchase of the high-speed turbo blower from Sulzer Limited for the water pollution control plant, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Sulzer Limited in the amount of $194,361.91, including net HST. We now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10541-2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor McGuire, seconded by Councilor McKenna. The bylaw to sole source the purchase of a high-speed turbo blower from Sulzer Limited, water pollution control plant, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Sulzer Limited in the amount of $194,361.91, including net HST. Be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10541-2024. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Councilor McKenna.
Yes, moved by myself, second by Councillor Miller, that a bylaw authorizing the execution of an agreement associated with Transfer Part 4 Enforcement Authority under the Clean Water Act 2006 for the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Miller that a bylaw authorizing the execution of an agreement associated with Transfer Part 4 Enforcement Authority under the Clean Water Act 2006 for the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan be received for the first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, please, Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, if I've got the sequencing right, just a moment ago, we appointed the Mississippi Rideau Valley Conservation Authority as our risk management official and risk management inspector, which we're required to do. We've named them. And in my mind, this one, the one I'm proposing, should have gone before the other. But so the people that are, the organization that's going to do that, we have to have a formal agreement with them. So we've named the people, we've designated them as the risk management officer. And now we've naming the organization that's going to deliver that service. And that's what this agreement's about.
Thank you. Any further comments? Can I have a third reading, please?
Again, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Miller that a bylaw authorizing the execution of an agreement associated with Transfer Part 4 Enforcement Authority under the Clean Water Act 2006 for the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10542-2024.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Miller. The bylaw authorizing the execution of an agreement associated with Transfer Part 4 Enforcement Authority under the Clean Water Act 2006 for the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10542-2024. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And back to you, Councillor Brennan.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller. The bylaw lifting part low lot control for the lands described as blocks 9, 11, 12, 19, 20, and 37 of Registered Plan 27M-102 to allow division of the blocks into separate street house, townhouse lots be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Brennan and seconded by Councillor Miller. The bylaw lifting part law control for the lands described as blocks 9, 11, 12, 19, 20, and 37 of Registered Plan 27M-102 to allow the division of the blocks into separate street townhouse lots be received over the first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
Yep, we discussed this a little while ago, and this is at Bellamy Farm. It's 37 properties, and all it is the final administrative step for developing these properties. So we look forward to more of that coming.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Give a third reading, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Miller, that a bylaw lifting part lot control for the lands described as blocks 9, 11, 12, 19, 20, and 37 of registered plan 27M-102 to allow division of the blocks into separate street townhouse lots be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 105-43-2024.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Brennan and seconded by Councillor Miller that the bylaw lifting part lot control over the lands described as blocks 9, 11, 12, 19, 20, and 37 of registered plan 27M-102 to allow the division of the blocks into separate street townhouse lots be now read a third time. Finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10543-2024. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And our final piece of business is with Councillor Quinn, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to award contract 24-PW-001 for Phase 1 of the George Street Reconstruction Project to Campbell's Trucking Limited, and to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract agreement with Campbell's Trucking for the amount of $1,907,663.80, excluding HST, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Quinn and seconded by Councillor Robinson that a bylaw to award contract 24-PW-001 for Phase 1 of the George Street Reconstruction Project to Campbell's Trucking Limited, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract agreement with Campbell's Trucking Limited in the amount of $1,907,663.80, excluding HST, be received or read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Quinn?
This is a good news with a big price tag, but it is a good news as we move forward to reconstruct some of the older streets that we have in town. And as we're doing that, new connections will go in. We will be separating the storm sewers, and that's all very positive. So it's good, and this is a first phase. So if people think that that's all that's happening on George Street, no, this is the first phase. The rest will happen in other years.
Hopefully next year we'll see. Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? Give the third reading, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to award the contract 24-PW-001 for Phase 1 of the George Street Reconstruction Project to Campbell's Trucking Limited, and to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract agreement with Campbell's Trucking Limited for the amount of $1,907,663.80, excluding HST, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10544-2024.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Quinn and seconded by Councillor Robinson. The bylaw to award contract 24-PW-001 for Phase 1 of the George Street Reconstruction Project to Campbell's Trucking Limited, and to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract agreement with Campbell's Trucking Limited for the amount of $1,907,663.80, excluding HST, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10544-2024. All in favor? Carried. That's it for our business. Any inquiries or announcements? Nope. No confirmatory bylaw, and our adjournment is with Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 7:56 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Quinn. This council adjourns proceedings at 7:56 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.